So the next question I have for you is kind of related to, we talked a lot about the policies, the current policies, and I think you briefly mentioned this as well. But the IRCC, or the immigration government, what are their perspectives over international students? You mentioned briefly, but can you elaborate more on what the trend is? Regardless of the COVID, like, what do you think the Canadian government could potentially adjust or change their immigration policy? Are those policies going to be favoring for international students? So can you speak more about that?
Sure. So as I identified before, I think the Canadian government, in comparison to a lot of other countries, has done and is doing very well in attracting international students and providing them with opportunities to apply for permanent residency. The inception or the introduction of the express entry system in 2015, 2016, the idea to do the express entry system was to essentially do that, make the whole process more streamlined, because prior to the express entry system, it was a first come, first served basis. You qualified under CEC, you'd put together your package, mail it off to a government office, and then wait, 7 or 8 months to see if you met the quota for the year. And if you didn't meet the quota, your application would be returned to you and say, good luck, try again next year. And that left a lot of students or a lot of people that studied in Canada with no options, because at that point they don't have they're not on a postgraduate work permit anymore. Their bridging open work permit is canceled or expired, so they didn't have many options. So the idea to get the express entry system going is that they didn't have to wait all that time, fairly quickly if you're going to get that invitation to apply. And then you have 60 days to submit your application, and the idea being, your application is in order, everything's in order. When it was first in the scores, when it was first introduced, like 2 years ago, for instance, the score was as low as 413. That's the lowest it's ever been under, one of the economic categories, under the CEC category. But as they were readjusting the numbers, and, people who have job offers, people who, have worked in Canada for 2 years, there started to be an influx and a change in the numbers. And that meant that a lot of students ended up actually being left behind in the express entry system. So one of the things, that we were seeing, and I'm hoping the government has listened to our feedback, because that's one of the things that our firm is known for, is advocacy for our clients and working with policymakers to talk to them about, from a grassroots perspective, what's working, what's not working, because we do the applications every day. So some of the feedback that our firm gave to the Canadian government and the policymakers was, there's a huge missed opportunity for Canadian graduates, specifically people graduating from colleges, because again, under the express entry system, your education, depending on your level of education, you get a certain score. So obviously a master's degree and a 4-year university degree has more points than a 2-year college diploma. And unfortunately, in the last year, with the trends being that the scores were at 470, there's very few college graduates that are going to meet that 470 threshold and get an invitation to apply. Really, the only ones that would get it is if you have a degree or a university degree back home, and then you came to Canada to further that education, get a diploma, for instance, in business management or accounting, to something to that degree. But if you're someone coming to learn to become a welder, or to become to do even programming at a college level, you're missing the mark under the express entry system. So I'm hopeful that, the decreases in the score means they've heard us. And I'm hopeful that the scores continue to stay where they are, because there's a good balance. I know why the government increased the scores, because they wanted to give an opportunity for the executives that are in their 50s to be able to become permanent residents. But again, by doing that, I think something got lost in translation and the students kind of got sidelined. So I'm hopeful that they're listening to that. And the reality is a lot of students, that are coming to Canada are very proactive. They know, okay, my mom and dad have invested a lot of time and money. I have to make sure, I do this for the family and for my future. So they're very proactive, but unfortunately there's some that there are no options available to them. So I'm hoping the numbers coming down is an indication and a continued opportunity for those individuals.
Yeah, that's just amazing. Like, just hearing the fact that you guys actually talk to the government, communicate your concerns and suggestions, that's just amazing. Because the only thing I can do is to, call a 1-800 number and wait for 4 hours without getting a feedback. Well, but anyway, so that's just amazing to hear that. So you actually mentioned something, and even myself, I'm personally interested to know about. I know we have some students who are actually thinking really ahead of time. They're not even in Canada yet, but they're thinking, okay, once I'm a PR, once I'm a permanent resident, can I sponsor my parents to come here? So it's kind of like a little kind of drifted from our topic today, but can you briefly just talk about the family sponsorship or parent sponsorship program on a high level? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is when a family makes a decision to send their child overseas, it's a family decision because it affects everyone's lives. And I mean, ultimately, it's the idea that, yes, you want to provide a better future for your child, but it's also for the entire family to also have the opportunity, to be reunited in Canada. From our perspective, this is the typical is what you've just identified. It's, studies, works, becomes a permanent resident, and then can sponsor mom and dad. So the parental sponsorship, obviously you have to be a permanent resident or a Canadian citizen to sponsor mom and dad or your grandparents. And then if you have any of your siblings that are under the age of 22, and they're able to come as a family unit with mom and dad. So basically how it works is this year, because of COVID, there are no sponsorships right now. The program didn't open. So we won't talk about this year. I'll talk about years in the past. How it works is it opens up at the beginning of the year. The quota gets filled. So the government's tried a few things. Before it was the first come, first served basis. Everyone shows up on January 1st, sends in their applications and waits to see if they met the quota. Then the government a few years ago introduced a online lottery system. There was lots of problems with that system, so they tried to implement another one, didn't quite get it right, actually made it worse. So this year we were very hopeful that they were finally going to find an answer, and then things happened with COVID, so it's been put on a pause. But the idea is that at the beginning of the year, if you're eligible to sponsor your parents, you would put in an expression of interest to say, I want to sponsor mom and dad, and then you'd be selected and then submit your application. So one of the things that students have to be mindful of is, and again, I feel awful because it puts so much pressure on them, is they're always, having to perform, get a job, get permanent residency. Now it's make sure you make enough money to sponsor mom and dad, right? It's a never ending, but I mean, it's a small cost to have mom and dad with you, but you have to make sure that you have enough funds. So you have to meet the minimum necessary income based on your family size. So if you're a single individual and it's just mom and dad, you would do the calculation based on 3 years, and it's a family of 3, and they look at a 3-year period. So you would have to have filed taxes or provide your finances for a 3-year period before you submit the application. And that's where a lot of the issues happen with our clients is proving that they've met that income. So typically our clients, because it's not what you have in savings, it's what you're earning. So the idea is, and you can't combine your finances with mom and dad's. I mean, it's a factor that can be considered, but on the very black and white eligibility, that doesn't factor into it.
We have a lot of students who are coming to Canada after they finish their degree, their college degree. But we also have students who have who have worked for quite a few years, so they're a bit older than the fresh graduates. The one thing they worry about is, you know, I'm a bit older. I'm in my 30s or in my 40s. So when I apply to an academic program trying to get a study permit, would that be hard? Would it be challenging? You know, is it very likely I'm going to be getting a refusal? That's a question that a lot of our students are asking. So from your perspective and based on your experience, can you share some information about that?
I mean, they're valid questions. I mean, as someone in her 30s, I don't know how I would even contemplate going back to school. So, I mean, they're valid questions, and it's a lot of money to then, you know, put and see, like, should I be applying? What are the advantages? Should I? The reality is, I mean, the government will look at it and say, okay, why do you need to come to Canada? If you already have a degree, you've been working, what's your plan, right? So it's the same idea as a student in their, in their late teens, early 20s. What's your study plan, right? Why do you want to come to Canada? What do you want to do? Are you coming to do a master's degree, in finance, because that'll put you in a more competitive, bracket back home? Do you want an MBA because it'll help you put you on, you'll never get on track to a certain portfolio if you don't have that qualification. It's all about fitting it together and explaining why you're making this decision right now and why Canada. So is it impossible? No. I mean, I've gotten a study permit for a man in his 50s. So, he tried on his own, it got refused because he didn't do the explanation that I just talked about. So we sat down together, we did a study plan. We did market research for what was going on back home, why he needed to do this. For him, it was about expanding his business, and a lot of the people that he was dealing with in the Middle East, it was a saturation. Everybody had an MBA from, the UK, from here and there, but he knew that there was a specific MBA program at McGill that he was really interested in, and it was a very specific skill set that he wanted to dive into in the Middle East. So we explained all of that, and ultimately he got his study permit. I've had people that have come to do their second master's degree. I mean, the reality is a lot of us choose our degrees or choose our schooling when we're very young and we're very different people, right? And, you go into the industry and you say, I thought I liked this, but I'm not really into it. I want to do something else. Again, I had a woman in her 40s. She was I believe at that time, she was working as a advertising executive back home. She didn't want to do it anymore. Her passion was to become a florist. She's like, it's something I always wanted to do. And there was a very prestigious horticulturalist program at West, I think it was at Niagara College. Mm-hmm. It was, a small group of people, and you have, this executive from Europe coming to Niagara College to learn how to plant flowers. But she wanted to change her, her profession. So, I mean, it's not unheard of. You can definitely get it, but it's just, being able to explain why at this age and at this, level, at this time in your career, you want to make the switch. And the reality is you can make a switch in your career at any point, right? So
I really appreciate that information and the time. And we're just about over an hour. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of more questions that students want to ask. And especially after this video, there will be, oh, I want to ask another million questions or whatever. So again, thank you very much, Christina, for your time today. We really appreciate this. For anyone who have more questions, or if you guys want to get some help or assistance from Christina, you can contact us by joining our community, and we have our QR code right at the end of the session. So make sure you contact us through that. And you can also send an email to info@uniexplore.com, and we'll be setting up something. If you need any help, we'll be connecting you guys with Christina. But again, thank you very much, Christina, for today. And I hope you have a great day.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day. Thanks.
Thanks.